Hey guys, this is John here in Los Angeles with the Alpha Channel update for Saturday, October 26th, 2024. And today's Hakur Halderson Yggdrasil deck card is Gangladi, Tardiness and Lethargy. And as late as I am getting this done, this is a bonus thing for me and for you. And I got my work of the day done. I got two color images flatted. I might include those at the end here. I'll probably do a bit of a it's late in the day and my brain is spacing on words. So a series of photos. I know there's a word for that. Not a carousel, not a cascade, but a series of photos, a selection of photos. A gallery of recently flatted colors that I've done for the angel characters. And today we are doing Conan 258, which kind of ties up. This is more of Roy Thomas getting a bit of a triumph through his Conan series, where they revisit all the old stories. This is kind of advertising for the previous issues. We're going back through, and Conan is going back and visiting old locations from his youth. This is still Roy Thomas and Mike Daugherty, although there is a new inker, and I've already forgotten his name. I believe it's Robert or Richard Villanueva. So it is Mike Daugherty on pencils. Daugherty? Can never say that name either. Mike Daugherty on pencils, and Ricardo Villagran on inks. Still Nel Yamatov on colors, and Roy Thomas is writing the story. Conan the Barbarian 258, and on the cover we have a bear, we have Vamatar, whatever her name is, two bears, and Princess Vamatar. And it's actually not Princess Vamatar. This girl has a different name. She's a new princess. But here Conan is still riding the skeleton pterodactyl up through the winter with Gulath Khan, Kulan Goth. They have such strange names. And Ahab, who's clinging to the front of the skeleton. And they're having a bit of a conversation about where they're going, what they need Conan to do. And here, Kulan Goth gives his backstory with Princess Vamatar. And, sorry if my hand was covering this up. He tells about these books of Shuma Gorath. And Shuma Gorath is the demon that Princess or wizard, sorceress Vamatar used to rain down the fire upon Conan's home village, which he still hasn't reached yet. But he's had these dreams that his home village was being covered in raining fire, and that's why he's going back. So this is Kulan Goth dealing with her, and they both are necromancers, and they both have armies of the dead, and they're sending them against each other until they're just cut to ribbons, fighting over these books of Shuma Gorath. She has the books and he has the key. So they agreed to work together. And this is them, in this panel right here, being married. And there's even a little bit of backstory about how they summon this demon that the priest doesn't know and sacrifice the priest to the demon. These two are a very evil pair. And so they get married to exploit these books. The books tell them how to kill Crom, who on his mountaintop is restraining Shuma Gorath. And so they're heading up to Crom's mountain. The top is supposedly hidden in storm and mist and fog and cloud. But when they get there, it's relatively calm and peaceful. Of course, the higher they get, the storm's going to come in. And it does. And here we get. This is what happens. Storm comes in and causes an avalanche. Not only that, as they get closer to the top, she orders her soldiers to attack and murder his soldiers. They're newlyweds. And Princess Vamatar, or Queen Vamatar, or evil sorceress Vomitar orders her dead soldiers to kill Kulan Goth's dead soldiers. And then there's a storm, and Kulan Goth is able to protect himself, but he can't protect his people, and he can't protect her. She's swept away by the avalanche caused by lightning and thunder on Crum's mountain. The books of Shuma Gorath are also swept away, and no one knows what happened to those. But this guy did some magneto powers and floated away. And then we cut back to him and Conan and Hob on his pterodactyl skeleton, and they get attacked by some of Princess Yamata's oh no, this is Princess Yamata. These are the witchmen of Princess Yamata. This, however, is there different colors too? I think it's just it's just a different inker. But because he's a different inker, he didn't know to ink their faces in white and ink their bodies in black and to do the cross hatching in white. So he inked their entire bodies in black. In the last few episodes, their faces have been white and their bodies have been black. But in this one, their whole body suit is white. And they're flying on the back of this dragon sort of thing, and Conan has to kill it because Kulan Goth has to pilot his dead pterodactyl. What this really is, I was showing you guys the wrong page. What this really is a device to separate Conan from Hob and Kulan Goth to advance the story a bit. And this is interesting what happens next. So Conan fights the monster, kills the witchmen, rescues Hob and Kulan Goth, but in the very last moment, as he's holding on to a tusk of the dead creature, whatever, it breaks and he falls, and he's going to fall and die. But then these snowhawks break his fall. Several of them get under him and sort of let him slow his descent so that when he hits the side of the mountain, he doesn't die. And Conan is of the Snowhawk tribe. So here he quickly, because the fun never ends. So almost as soon as he comes to a stop, he's attacked by a polar bear. And this girl is riding the bears. This is Ursula of the Snow Bear tribe, and she and Conan have met before. In Conan the Barbarian, the movie, this is essentially the witch who lives out on her own, who Conan throws into the fire. Only in this one, Conan didn't kill her, and she reveals that she saw him fall in her witch's premonition, and she sent the Snowhawks to rescue him because she has a revelation to share with Conan that on their one night together, he got her pregnant and they had a son. And this was about 10 years ago when Conan was 15. And now, obviously in the movie, Conan's not 15. Arnold Schwarzenegger is at least 25. In reality, he was 29 or 30 when they made that movie. But in the movie, he was supposed to be at least 25. But Conan, when he met her, they had a son. And because she's a witch and she's a lot older than she looks and she has all these witch powers, her son grew a lot older, a lot faster than expected. And Conan killed his own son by her a few years ago, and which is weird because he's been gone for 10 years, but he killed his son like a few years ago in issue 150 something. So there the time doesn't really work out. This would have to be like 15 years later and not 10 years later. But regardless, this is a bittersweet reunion. Conan, these last few issues, Conan is going back and meeting all the people whose lives he's wrecked. This is sort of like an alcoholic doing amends. But Conan and her sort of reconcile a bit, but he still leaves because he has to get back to his homeland, his home village. He does defend her from the dead soldiers who have been reanimated by Princess Vomitar or Sorceress Vomitar. These are the soldiers from his village who are now attacking her. He recognizes some of them. Some of these people he knew as a kid that he's now got to fight right here. And this doesn't really have the sort of emotional impact that it should. I think this should have maybe been 2 issues if he's going to meet her and stay with her for a minute and then fight off these men from his own village. Now, granted, they didn't want to drag out this sort of, like this way, this whole conversation with her can happen like right outside of her hut, and then these guys come by and he recognizes them, and so he knows that his kinsman, his village is destroyed. There is some different versions of this in Savage Sword. There's one called Night of the Dark God where Conan goes back to his home village and it's not been destroyed, so presumably it was before this. And his girlfriend has been kidnapped. That's a Neil Adams issue, and it's really early on. Night of the Dark God. Anyhow, Conan is heading down from the snowy mountain, getting closer to his home. The hills are becoming green and not snowy anymore. And he's got the helmet. He's got a helmet. Here is the burnt remains of his village. And it's been at least a month or more that it's taken him to get back. All there is blackened, bits of the houses. He picks up a teddy bear and it crumples to dust in his hand. And here he vows to get revenge on Vomitar. And that is Conan 258. It's a pretty sad one. He doesn't go to jail in this one. He doesn't throw a sword in this one, although he does fight a flying demon. But there is a girl that he seduced in the past. So, how does that relate to the things that I want to talk about right now? Conan and comic books and fiction and how to get your stories in front of other people. Roy Thomas may have done his great work, yes, but he didn't get to do it with his own characters. He had to do it with someone else's characters. A lot of the greatest writers of our generation, the most famous writers, suffered particularly not happy lives. It didn't always go well for them. I believe Mark Twain lost everything in bad real estate deals. Hemingway lost everything at the end of a shotgun. Robert E. Howard lost everything at the end of a revolver or a pistol. So it doesn't always go well, Roy Thomas had to do his great life's work with someone else's character. That's a compromise. That's a compromise. I at least got to create my own character, my own pantheon. I've got a whole fleet of characters that I can do spin-offs with. Reverend Wolf will be a great one. Here's my own version of Solomon Kane. Everything is a reply to everything else. There's not really anything original under the sun. You could say that Conan is a version of Achilles, or Leonidas, or Spartacus, or any of the great old heroes. Ashley here is a version of Joan of Arc, really. Probably even more so than Aeon Flux. She's a version of Joan of Arc, the ultimate rebel. And here she is rescuing children, So, I want to talk about one of the earlier versions of one of these that I did. It was about barriers to entry in comics, but specifically I want to talk about barriers to entry in writing and in fiction and getting your work out there and sticking to your guns and writing what you want to write and not being influenced by society at large or the people around you. John Milton had to change the entire third act for Paradise Lost. He had to. He was in real trouble. Like he was in real trouble. He found himself, that was probably one of the early cancel mobs. When John Milton wrote Paradise Lost, you guys look it up and see what effect that had on the society of his day. And that's not the only sort of compromise writers are forced to make. In a lot of ways, writers self-censor themselves. They don't give the characters the ending the characters demand. I was thinking about this earlier. Stephen King, right? Stephen King got such accolades for being, aggressive, take no prisoners, sort of rebellious author who wrote this saccharine pop serial killer schlock, right? Like a lot of people didn't like his work, and they decided that he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. When actually Stephen King, if you look at who he is today, he was a sheep in wolves' clothing. And that was why he was able to get in so well and walk among the intelligentsia of his day, because he was not a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was a sheep disguising himself as a wolf, selling himself as a wolf. And if you look at who he is today, he's obviously a sheep. No one becomes that much of a sheep. No one who is a wolf in their youth becomes that sort of a sheep in their old age. Look at Stallone. Stallone was a wolf, and he's still a wolf. You can tell who are the frauds by who they are in their old age. Clint Eastwood is still a wolf. Schwarzenegger, not so much. You could make all sorts of arguments, and I'm just sort of coming up to this right now, so I'm going to take some more time to think about it. But I do have some thoughts I do want to stick to about being a writer and the things that people tell you to do, which are not, especially in comics, really won't work. One of them being, write what you know. How are you going to write Conan the Barbarian? Write what you know. How would Ben-Hur have ever gotten written by Governor Lew Wallace? I was in the Marine Corps, but not most comic book writers are military veterans. Now, granted, back in the day when basically every able-bodied young man was drafted into a war, be it the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, all that stopped because the wars we're fighting now are unjust. You can't have a draft if the war is unjust. And there was a lot of hemming and hawing about the justness of the draft for Vietnam to bail out France, who had overinvested in a country and exploited the natives. And then when that country went communist, asked America to bail them out. So was that a just war? I don't know. I don't care. As a writer, when someone says, write what you know, and all you've ever been is a complacent, go along to get along bitch, how are you going to suddenly write about heroes who are supposed to have courage when you've never shown an ounce of backbone in your life? How are you going to do that? You've never been even to a martial arts class. You've never tried to box or get in the ring. You've never competed in any real way. What we have right now are the participation trophies as writers. And that's why the heroes are not heroic. They don't know anything about putting themselves on the line and risking their own safety, their own well-being for someone else. People have never had to do that. All they know is cutthroat competition and pushing the girl in front of them down the stairs to take her spot on the dance squad. That's who these people are. It's and that's what they write about. So here's another thing they tell you not to do as a writer. They tell you, it's not a don't do, but it's a must do. Know your audience. That's a very hard thing to do. If you're not writing for yourself, who are you writing for? Our culture is so divided that if you're not writing for someone just like yourself, you're culturally appropriating. But at the same time, they tell you don't self-insert. So if you're not allowed to self-insert, and they don't want you to culturally appropriate, but you have to know your audience and to write what you know, but you're 18 or 20 and you've never done anything except go to school, how do you break into an industry that's set up those sorts of caveats for you? So you have to go out and live life. You have to go out and figure out who you are and challenge yourself and discover what you're going to do under different circumstances. I'm still surprising myself all the time. I can accomplish a lot more than I ever thought, but I'm a sucker in different ways. You know, I've learned certain traps. So a new writer who's told to write what you know, don't self-insert, don't culturally appropriate, know your audience, and basically you're going to be writing for yourself and your friends because that's this kind of stuff you enjoy reading. You're not qualified, even at this age. Who I am now is not really qualified to write for my parents' audience. The life I've lived is incredibly different from the struggles that they went through, and the struggles I've gone through are much more geared toward my audience, my generation, and I would hope the generations coming up, because I can see what they're up against, and they honestly don't even understand what they're up against yet. So a couple of the other ones are don't preach, but don't be ambiguous, right? So that, and you couple that with show, don't tell. So you look at all these are all contradictory advice that as a young writer, you have to balance all of these. You have to spin all these plates at the same time, right? You have to show, don't tell, don't self-insert, don't culturally appropriate, write what you know and know your audience. At the same time, don't preach and don't be ambiguous. So don't preach and don't be ambiguous. Those two contradict each other. What that really means is write characters who are, let me break these down even for myself in a way that makes more sense. Write natural characters who don't feel out of place solving the problems you present for them at a level that doesn't fit their character. Make sure the solutions they bring to the table are in character for them. So that is how you don't self-insert. That's how you show, you don't tell. That's how you're not ambiguous, and you're also not preaching. You let it be natural for the characters, right? What are some of the other ones? Write what you know and know your audience. Now, if you want to write about the martial arts, or you want to write about characters doing martial arts or doing military type stuff, I recommend serving some time in the military and attending martial arts school, getting in the ring, getting in fights, challenging yourself with whatever you're scared of. For me, the final challenge was getting on a skateboard. After all the martial arts, after working out, after the military, after learning how to use a weapon, after learning how to teach people to defend themselves, that was the final thing. And I didn't start skating until COVID, so it's new for me. But that's the biggest challenge. And writing, now, all along the way, I've been able to work all this into my writing, but this skating confirmed to me who I am. Now I know who I am, and no one can take that away from me. And I've been writing all this time, been focusing on so how do you write science fiction? How do you write the future? How do you write the past? You know what I mean? You really have to insert yourself into this. So for me, that meant a lot of what Ernest Hemingway and Robert Rodriguez and Robert E. Howard all have in common. The three of them write in a way where they can see the movie in their head. Quentin Tarantino does this too. They know what's going to happen. Not just know what's going... Now, I don't know all the scenes. A lot of them come to me in the moment when I'm watching it. But I can watch it in my head and write it at the computer. I've been doing this so long that I can do those two things at the same time. Making up stories in my head is how I used to occupy my spare time as a kid. When I used to have to sit and wait somewhere, whether it was at church, at school, whatever it was that you had to sit and do nothing, I used to make up little stories in my head about ninjas, about G.I. Joe, about Spider-Man, about whatever. And I got very good at it, and I'm still able to do it to this day. And I love it. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I admit I am in some ways a bit of a coward in that I have always found another way to make my money instead of depending full time on making my money writing creatively. Now, granted, that has always, in most cases, that has been, to me, that is like being a cover artist if you're an illustrator, only being a cover artist the way J. Scott Campbell is a cover artist, not the way some other cover artists only do covers and have never done interiors. You could say J. Scott Campbell mastered interiors with the Danger Girl comics, or that he only wants to do covers, or that he's just that good of an artist. Alex Ross did interiors. Frank Miller's probably, I would say, the best narrative artist for interiors, for simple interiors. And I'm sure I'm wrong about that. I said I don't want to do superhero comics, and there's no way Daredevil is not a superhero comic. The Hell's Kitchen series, I don't know what Frank Miller's Hell's Kitchen series is called, but the Batman Year One series that Frank Miller did, even the Sin City stuff, the Negative Space, it's hard to say he's not one of the best. But John Buscema, Roy Thomas, Mike Doherty, Mike Zeck on the Punisher books. Interiors are a special thing. It's storyboarding on steroids. You're basically taking the panel and just throwing the camera frame out the window and giving yourself permission to do all sorts of frames. So I massively respect interiors. And as a writer, I felt I had to master the art of writing before I tried to master the art of illustration. I knew that if I got in somewhere without focusing on writing, that I would be forever resentful of not having chased that first. So for me, it was, this is the horse before the cart. If I had learned how to draw first, that would have been the cart before the horse. I had to learn how to ride this horse of the short story, which is present in every single chapter in these two 26 hours of audiobooks, or 13-hour individual audiobooks, or 750 average page novels. Every chapter is its own short story. And I created them in such a way that I am absolutely satisfied that I know my audience, know my characters, don't self-insert, show, don't tell. I did everything right. And I know I did because I go back and listen to it now, and it's not cringe. And I read a lot. I absorb tons of fiction. So I go back and listen to my own stuff, and it's right up there, top shelf, cream of the crop. I'm as happy as I could be because I didn't compromise at any step along the way. I feel like I now have the chops to get a job as a full-time writer and not be learning on the job, bring something to the table, but there's no way in hell that I would work for Marvel or DC or Fox or Disney or Sony or any of these Jew-run owned companies. I will never make a Jew a penny. You'll never get a shekel off of me, Jew. And it's not because of what you've done to my culture or the way you've attacked white society. It's because you have no morals. Because you have no moral compass. And without morals, a writer has no value. And without values, you cannot illustrate for the audience. Value literally being white to black, right? Black and white, values. Colors are values. What is this blue? This is maybe 60, 80%, 20%. What are the values? The black is 100. So what are your values? If your values are flexible, you can't be a writer. So Jews cannot work in culture. I can't work with them, can't be around them, can't have anything to do with them. They have no morals. Blacks have better morals than Jews. At least blacks know they're selfish, right? They're just, I'm out for me. It's about me. It's about me. Jews will sacrifice themselves Jews will self-sacrifice to lay one in on the enemy. So that sort of treachery you can't work with, because you can never trust them. You're always their enemy. Blacks won't do that. Blacks will not sacrifice themselves to hurt you. That's not in them. And Jews, even worse, will sacrifice other people to hurt their enemies, right? Jews will lets you and him fight. And even if you win, they're happy because you got hurt. So that's the type of fighting white people don't do. Although we might in the future. We learn fast. So I would like to invite you guys to check out my audiobooks here on YouTube. If you're into fiction, if you have a fiction addiction, Legacy of a Mad Scientist, Legend of Ashley Fox, you will not be disappointed. The last chapter we left off on would be when the Micronix falls to Ashley's feet while she's out in the canyon with her brother and their dog Jack, and time stops when she picks it up. Everything stops. Later on, she thinks it's a lack of sensation, that she's not hearing or feeling anything. She's really just lying to herself. The truth is, time has slowed in her mind to the extent that she can think so fast and make decisions so fast, it feels like time has stopped. And there's actually the proof every time she thinks about it and goes back to wonder about it. She has to acknowledge that when this fell to the canyon in front of her, there was a guy attached to it, and his blood splashed everywhere. And in the future, if you fall from one of the floating city, the floating buildings in the city, in the floating city of Angel City, it's called Angel City, the EMTs can get to you within 90 seconds. Most people are about 2 minutes above the ground. A lot of the city, you need oxygen, you can't go outside for very long, you get hypoxia. So they're trying to reach this guy, Chairman Pierce, but they can't, and he smashes into the ground. And when the EMTs are trying to chase someone falling, they have these giant lasers that they set up around the person to show that they're trying to catch a guy. And Ashley can see the pulses between the lasers, whereas in real time it just looks like a solid red light. But because time is slowed to such an extent, she can see the gaps between them. So every time she goes back to remember that, she has to deal with that, the fact that time is froze. And then her dog goes crazy, and she and her little brother have to go running off after him, and they can't find him. They get all the way down to old Los Angeles and have to go hiking all the way back up the hill. And Legacy of a Mad Scientist, check it out. All right, talk to you guys tomorrow.